Good morning, students. I hope my screen is visible to all of you. So, in the last session, we have discussed about the garbage collection and strings and string buffers. So, we understood how garbage collection is automatically performed in Java. That is, the GC method will be periodically executed by JVM to make sure that the unused objects are removed from the heap memory. So we also understood the importance of the finalize method, which is available in the object class. We have seen an example yesterday to understand the use of this protected void finalize method, which is of the object class. So this finalize method will be invoked by JVM when your object is about to be erased from the heap memory, and in case if you want to invoke the GC method on your own, just to make sure that all the objects that you have created are no longer required for you, and you want to free the memory that were occupied by the objects created by you, then what you can do is you can just initialize your object references with a null, and then you can get the runtime instance by invoking the statement runtime r equal to runtime dot get runtime. And then since you have initialized all the objects to null, now you can invoke the r.gc method, which will erase all the objects in the heap, and with each erasure of the object, the associated finalize method of the class will be executed. So the finalize method main purpose is to perform all the closing of file operations or releasing of resources that were associated with the object, so that when the object is chosen to be destroyed from the heap memory, then the finalize method will be executed by JVM, which will contain all the close operations and release operations. So this is how the garbage collection is used in Java, and the purpose of the finalize method of the object class, which is a protected method. Since object is the supermost class, every class can contain its own finalize method. And later we have discussed with examples how string class and string buffer class are useful. We have seen some important methods with regard to both the classes. So string class, we go for creating immutable strings, but if our goal is for performing mutable strings, then we go for string buffer class. Yesterday itself, before winding up the session, I said you what we are going to cover today. So we are going to discuss packages, abstract classes, interfaces, and if time permits, we'll just have a introduction to the exception handling and the types of exceptions. So let's begin with abstract classes. So what is abstract class? What is the purpose of this abstract class? So the main purpose of these abstract classes is to create a generalized class to create a generalized class so that all the children can get this generalized nature. In addition to that, each and every inherited one can have its own specialized features. So that is the purpose of going for abstract class. As the name itself makes you understand, abstract class means it contains certain abstract features. It contains certain abstract features meant for the children to implement them. Meant for children to implement them. So an abstract class can contain both abstract methods as well as concrete methods. Here we are saying abstract method and concrete method. First, let us understand what is the difference. So, a concrete method is the one which has definition. A concrete method is the one which has definition. That means the body of the method is defined. That is what we call concrete method. Whereas abstract method is the one which has only declaration specified, but definition is left for the children to implement. So this is what the abstract method. I repeat, methods are of two types: abstract methods and concrete methods. Concrete methods are those which have definition along with declaration. Which have definition along with declaration. That means the body of the method is also defined along with declaring the method. That is what concrete method. Coming to abstract method, only the declaration is specified, but the definition is not provided. So the definition is left it for the children. The definition is left it for the children. So each and every child must and should provide the definition. That is what the abstract method. Now, the question is, what if the child also doesn't provide definition to the abstract method of the parent? Simple. Then the child also to be declared as abstract class. Then the child also to be declared as abstract class. So, the main purpose of this abstract class is to create some abstract methods as well as some concrete methods. We use this for the children purpose. We use for the future generations kind of thing. So all the children that will be inherited from this abstract class, it is their responsibility to implement or to provide definitions for all the abstract methods that were declared in the parent. If child is not interested to define any of the abstract method that is given by the parent, then the child also to be declared as abstract. This is the main point that should be remembered. So abstract classes are meant for providing abstract nature for the children, where the children has to provide the implementation for the abstract nature declared by the parent. If child wishes to leave any of the abstract nature, not to define himself, then the child should declare himself to be abstract. So this is the main point to be remembered in this abstract classes. Now let us understand these things with the implementation. I mean with examples. So I have already opened my IDE. Let me open the magnifier. Now let me just create a class. So here I am just using abstract demo. I'm just naming this class to be abstract demo, and let me click finish. and then here what I'll do is I'll just name class uh, test3, something like that, and then here what I'll do is I'll just declare a variable int n equal to 10, and then here I'll write one method void m1 without any parameters. I'll just define it as sys out control space, and then I'm just saying parent method, and let me define one abstract method. So now here you can see when I'm just keeping semicolon, it is saying error because if it's a method call, you are not supposed to write the return type. If it's a method definition, then you are not supposed to keep a semicolon. I hope everyone can understand the point what I'm saying. So if it is a method call, you are not supposed to mention the return type. If it is a method definition, you are not supposed to keep the semicolon. But I am doing both. That is, I am keeping semicolon and I am writing the return type. So my intention is to say this is the abstract method. But how does the compiler understand that this is not a normal method and it's an abstract method? So for that, I should declare this method to be abstract by using the keyword abstract. Now, when I write abstract, automatically the class also to be declared abstract. The class also to be declared abstract. So I am defining again the class as abstract. So now you can see errors are gone. Whatever the red cross marks you have seen earlier, they were gone. So if you want to declare a method which you want all the children to provide definitions of their own choice, I repeat, if you want to declare a method for which you want all your children to provide their own definitions, then you go for abstract method. And if your class contains at least one abstract method, then, sorry, then you should declare your class to be abstract. If your class contains at least one abstract method, then you can declare your class to be abstract. And abstract classes cannot be instantiated. Underline this point. Abstract classes cannot be instantiated. What does it mean? You cannot create objects for the abstract classes. You cannot create object for an abstract class. The answer is simple because abstract class by the name can be understood as it contains some methods without body. I mean abstract methods. So when you have the class containing methods without body, what is the use of creating objects to that? Because you cannot anyway call that method since it doesn't contain any body. Since that class which you are saying it to be abstract contains some abstract methods which doesn't contain body, then what is the point of creating object to that class and calling the method which doesn't have body? So that is the reason you cannot create object to an abstract class. This is an important point, underline it. So if a class contains at least one abstract method, then the class has to be declared abstract. So this is what you can see, abstract void m2. So here m2 method is defined, m2 method is declared to be abstract. That's the reason class is also declared as abstract. Now here I have another class, public class abstract demo, and if I say here extends what is my parent class, test3. So right now, when I have just written this statement, you can see a red cross mark because since I am saying my class abstract demo is extending test3, there when I move my mouse cursor over there, you can see the type abstract demo must implement the inherited abstract method test3.m2. Here you can see the type abstract demo must implement the inherited abstract method test3.m2. As I said, the abstract methods are meant for children to implement. The abstract methods are meant for children to implement. Here, since I am saying abstract demo is child of test3, so abstract demo is the child of test3 which has to provide definition for the abstract method m2. Here, abstract demo is the child of test3, so it is the responsibility of this abstract demo class to provide definition for abstract method m2 of the parent. That's what the error which you are getting there. Suppose if I just write void m2, and if I just give this at least opening and closing brace, now here you can see. Oh, sorry. Here I should write the brackets. Then only it can be considered to be method. Earlier I have just written void m2. So since there were no brackets, it just treated it as a variable. So here you can see when I have written void m2, you can see that red cross mark vanished, because now whether it contains some statements or not, since I have included this declaration void m2, and an opening brace and closing brace makes it understood for the compiler that you are providing a definition for the abstract method of parent. Thereby now the error is gone. So this is how it must be understood. So abstract methods are meant for the children to implement. Now for suppose if I am not interested, now you can see there is error. Suppose if I just make this also abstract, if I just make this also abstract, now you can see again red cross mark vanished. Now again you can see red cross mark vanished. That means, as I said, it is the responsibility of the children to provide implementations for all the abstract methods that were declared by the parent. If child wishes to leave at least one abstract method of the parent without providing definition, I mean implementation, then the child should declare itself as abstract. Now you can see the red cross mark vanished when I have declared child also abstract. So if you don't want child to be abstract, so that you can create objects to the abstract class, child class, then what you have to do is you have to provide implementations for all the abstract methods that were declared by the parent. So if you want to create object for the child at least, because I can't create object for the parent anyway here since it is abstract, so the only possibility to create object is for the child. So if you want to create object for the child, then at least you should declare child to be normal class other than abstract, which is possible only by providing implementation. Only by providing implementation. So I'm just writing a simple println statement, just indicating it's a child method, and my intention is nothing to show output here, just to make you understand that an abstract class can contain both concrete methods as well as abstract method, and the child class must and should provide definition for all the abstract methods of the parent. So this is the main point what I am trying to convey here. Let me write main method also. So if I just write main method also, now in the main method I'll just create object. So test3 equal to, ob equal to new test3. Now here you can see what happens. It will raise an error, because what is that we are doing here, I'm trying to create object for the test3. And what is test3? It's an abstract class. Test3 is an abstract class which you are not supposed to create object. So that is the reason you are getting here error. But one thing what you can do is, So I'm replacing it with abstract demo. Now you can see the error gone. Now you can see the error gone. So what is that I'm doing? This we have seen in the last sessions also. In my last classes also I have said this. So parent class reference variable can be used to point to child class object. Parent class reference variable can be used to point child class object. Now here what is happening? So even though OB is the reference variable of the parent, but it is pointing to child object, which is legal, which is legal. And similarly, even though I cannot create object for the abstract class, but still I can have my own constructor. Abstract class can have its own constructor. So this constructor is for the child class purpose. This also we have seen. So I have just written parent constructor. Now here you can see what will happen. Ob dot m1 ob dot m2. So it's very simple program. So you just observe what is being done here. So there is a parent class test3, which is an abstract class, which has its own constructor defined with no parameters, and there is an concrete method like m1 here what you can see, and it's just displaying a parent method message, and there is an abstract method m2 which is left for the child to implement, and here class abstract demo is there, which is extending from this test3 class, and it's not having any methods of its own. It just implements the method of parent m2, and just printing a message child method. And in the main method you can see what I have done. So I have just created a reference variable for the parent, and I just pointed this parent reference variable to the child object, and then you can see with this parent reference variable which is pointing to child object, I am just executing m1 and m2 methods. So observe, this m1 method is of the parent, m2 method is of the child. Now when I just run this, so you can see the output parent constructor, parent method, child method. If you carefully observe, we haven't called the parent constructor because I haven't created any object for the parent. But in the last classes also I have discussed, whenever you are invoking the child constructor, by default, the super parameterless constructor will be invoked on the child. By default, the super parameterless constructor will be invoked on the child. That means the parent constructor will be executed. So I hope everyone understood why the parent class can have constructor even though we cannot create object. This is the reason. So even though you can't create object for the abstract class, but still you can have constructor in an abstract class which can be used by the child class, which can be used by the child. So this is how. So that's the reason when you are invoking this abstract demo, this is of the child. But if you observe, I did not even define my own constructor, and you know the reason. Even though you don't define your own constructor, JVM will add the default parameterless constructor to your class. JVM will add the default parameterless constructor to your class. So for your understanding, I'm just saying what it will happen. So here indirectly JVM what it will be doing is it will just add a method like this. This is what JVM will add a default constructor like this. And we know that whenever you are calling the child class constructor, the first statement by JVM again what it will be doing is it will add like this. So indirectly this particular piece of code which is selected now, this is being added by JVM directly. You have not written this, but this is whatever now selection is made, this particular piece of code will be added by JVM directly. That is the reason when you are invoking the child constructor, even though you don't have defined your own constructor, JVM have added a dummy constructor and it have invoked the super parameterless which invokes the parent constructor. That's the reason you got the output like that. So this is the point to be understood here. So even though you don't have constructor uh, of your own, JVM will add the constructor. And even though you don't create object to the abstract class, but still you can define constructor for the abstract class, which can be used by the child. So these are the points to be noted. And I hope the initial points what I made also everyone understood. So it's the responsibility of child to override each and every method of the parent. If not, you will get error saying that you did not implement. So make this abstract. Here you can see the quick fixes. Add unimplemented methods, make type abstract demo abstract. You can just see here two quick fixes. Add unimplemented methods or make type abstract demo abstract. That means declare the class. So here if I just click on this, you can observe. If I just click this, now you can see it's made abstract. It is made abstract. So when it is made abstract, this is illegal. That's the only error you can see there. Suppose if I just go for the first quick fix, add unimplemented methods, automatically it will generate a method like this. You can see these annotations we will discuss later. When you have something starting with at the rate, we call that as annotation. We will come across those annotations later. What is the purpose of annotations and what is all that we will see later. So like this dummy stub being created by the compiler itself. So these are the points to be understood with regard to abstract classes. So this is it. This is with regard to abstract classes. And one more point I would like to tell you here is suppose if I don't write this, if I don't write this, I'll just show you another way of asking in the assessment exams. Carefully observe what I'm just doing. Now, so here if you observe, there is class test3 here, and then here this public class abstract demo, which is not extending test3 actually. We are not extending test3. And in this main method, this is another way of just twisting you in the assessments. So here test3 OB, now this is the reference variable for the abstract class. And here for your surprise, I'm directly calling new test3. But if you carefully observe, it should end with semicolon. It should end with semicolon. But if you observe, the semicolon is ended here. The semicolon is ended here. Now observe the selection part. Observe the selection part. So this selection part is included in the statement. This selection part is included in the statement, which you have to understand that this is an anonymous class. We call this selection part as a anonymous class. I hope all of you can understand by the word anonymous. Anonymous means no name. Anonymous means no name. Now, whatever the selection I made, it is a class. As you know, when you have declared a class, you will have an opening brace and then some variables or methods and then a closing brace. So that you can see in this selection, there is an opening brace, there is a closing brace just before the semicolon, and it is having a method. Now what happens is JVM understands whatever this anonymous class, that is the selection part is there, it is a subclass. It is a subclass to which class? For the test3, because it is the one which you can see it before the equal to operator. Before the assignment, what is that? You can see the class name test3. So since before assignment operation there is a test3 class name, JVM understands that this anonymous class is a subclass to this test3 whose reference variable will be pointing to this anonymous class. So this selection is nothing but the child class but with no name, and object is being created actually for this anonymous class. Even though you can see there new test3, the object is not being created for test3. The object is created for the anonymous class. The object is created for the anonymous class with the reference variable of test3. That's the point you need to understand. This is another way of accessing the things. This is also legal. This is another way of asking for just making you confused, just for confusing you in the uh, assessments they will ask you. So you can see output doesn't change, output is the same, but with only difference that earlier I have written everything in a smoother way, like properly I have written parent class and child class extends. So everything I have written very plain and who can where everyone can understand. But now here you can see there is a small twist where I have used the concept of anonymous class. So this is one way of asking you in the assessment exams, just to make you confused. So obviously what you might feel is, you feel that this will be leading to some compile time error, because here M2 is not being implemented, or somebody might feel that test3 cannot have an object. So just remember this point. So this is with regard to abstract classes. And next, another thing what you have to understand is, now here I can have final methods, final void m1. Observe this, in abstract class I have just declared my m1 method as abstract, sorry, final. Sorry, I just declared my m1 method in abstract class as final. What does it mean? It indicates that all the children can access m1 method, but they cannot override this m1 method. So if I am declaring my concrete method in my abstract class as final, it means that the children can access this method from the abstract class as it is, but they cannot override it. But now what do you see? Now you can see that if I am saying abstract final void m2, now it is raising error. So abstract and final cannot be used together. Remember this point, underline this point. So abstract and final cannot be used together, because you know that you are declaring this method to be abstract, expecting the children to override it. Then there is no point making this abstract method as final, because if you make abstract method as final which cannot be overridden by the children, then there is no point. So that's the reason you cannot declare abstract methods as final. So I hope everyone is confident with all these abstract concepts now. So these are the things that should be remembered with respect to abstract classes. So, and one more statement I would like to give here. Even though you do not have any abstract method, remember this point, the very last point with regard to abstract classes. Even though you do not have any abstract methods, but still you can declare your class to be abstract. I think somebody might be feeling confused with the earlier statement what I made. In the initially I made saying that if your class contains at least one abstract method, then your class must be declared abstract. But need not compulsorily. So if your class doesn't contain even a single abstract method, you can still declare your class to be abstract. The reason is, when I don't have even a single abstract method, then why anyone will be interested to declare their class abstract? For a simple reason that they don't want anybody creating objects to their class. Understand the point? So why somebody will be interested to make their class abstract even though they don't have even a single abstract method? The answer is simple, because they do not want anyone else to create object for their class. So this is the answer. So even if you don't have any abstract method, you can still declare your class to be abstract. The only reason why you go for that is because you do not want anybody else to create objects for your abstract class. So these are the points with regard to abstract classes. Now let us understand interfaces again with some piece of code. Let me create one more class with the name interface demo. I'll just use a name interface demo. Okay, so I just created a class interface demo, and now what is the interface? First let us understand the theoretical part. What is interface, why interfaces, and then we will start understanding interfaces with example code. Now in my earlier session I have mentioned a point that multiple inheritance is not supported by Java directly, but it is achieved in Java with the concept of interfaces. So that's the point. As we have discussed with regard to the types of inheritance, no class can have more than one parent. That's what generally Java supports. But what if you want your class to have more than one parent? Then you can go for interfaces. Then you can go for interfaces. What you can do is you can just create n number of interfaces, and then you can just make your class to be inherited from all these interfaces at a time. That means you can create n number of interfaces, and then you can inherit a class. Your class can inherit any number of interfaces. So for achieving this inheritance in Java, Java provided two keywords, extends and implements. Java provided two keywords, extends and implements. So when you write extends beside a class, then you can extend only one single class. Even though you are using the term extends, but you can extend only one single class. You can extend only one single class. But if you are using the keyword implements, then you can write n number of interfaces there. Understand the point? So when you are writing class preceded by extends keyword, you can write only one single class name. But when you are writing class preceded by implements keyword, you can write n number of interfaces. Now what is interface and what does it contain? So interface is something like a class only, but which contains all abstract methods only. I repeat, interface is something that has a class structure, but it contains all abstract methods. That means in the earlier case we have understood that abstract classes can contain both concrete methods and abstract methods, but in interfaces we will be having only abstract methods. We will be having only abstract methods. And another point that to be remembered with regard to interfaces is by default, by default, all the variables that you declare inside an interface are public static final variables. I repeat my statement. By default, all the variables that you declare inside an interface are public static final variables. That means they are constants. They are constants which can be used by the children but cannot be altered. So by default, all the variables that you declare inside an interface are public static final, which can be used by the children but cannot be altered. And by default, all the methods that you declare inside an interface are by default they are public and abstract. By default, all the methods that you declare inside an interface are public and abstract. Now let us first see with an example. So this is how you declare an interface with the keyword interface. And then here I'm just saying, okay, I'll just say I1. So here you can see interface I1. Since it's my first interface, I've just written interface I1. And here if I just say int n. Now you can see there error. There you can see a cross mark which indicates error. When I move my mouse cursor over there, you can read the error. The blank field, the blank final field n may not have been initialized. The blank final n may not have been initialized. As I said just now, by default, all the variables that you declare inside an interface are treated to be public static final. That means you might have not written those words there. You did not write those words public static final int n, but still by default all the variables that you declare inside interface will be public static final. So that means you have to define value for that. I hope everyone understood now. So before I have assigned value to this n, you have seen it have raised some compile time error saying that value is not initialized. Now when I have just assigned some value 10 to this variable n, the error is gone. So the point to be noted is all the variables, whether you use the keywords public static final or not, all the variables are public static final variables. Now another thing, void m1. Observe this, void m1. Now what you can see, in the earlier case, when I have written something like this, I used to use a keyword abstract before the method, because I cannot have a method with a return type and ended with a semicolon, because when you have return type you should define it. I mean, you should write you should provide body for it. Suppose if you are ending with semicolon, you should not have return type, meaning that you are calling the method. Earlier I have said you with the abstract demo, and I said that you must use the keyword abstract, but here I am not using. So you should understand whether you write it or not. Before this void, before this void, there is public abstract. There is public abstract. Similarly, before this int, there is public static final. Understand this point. By default, whether you write it or not, before this variable declaration, by default there will be public static final. Similarly, by default, whether you write it or not, there is public abstract for a method. There is public abstract for a method. So these are the points to be noted with regard to this interface definition. Next, another interface let me create. So interface I2, and here let me define one more method, void m2. So very simple. So what I have done, I have just created two interfaces with one interface containing void m1 method, another interface containing void m2 method. And now suppose this is another case I'm just making you understand. Interface I3. If I'm writing interface I3 extends I1 comma I2. This is another way of using extends keyword. So far what we have done is we have used extends keyword with respect to class name. So I have class name then followed by extends keyword followed by another class name. Now when you are using extends keyword along with interface name, then you can have only interfaces being extended. I repeat, when you are using extends keyword along with the interface name, then you can extend only other interfaces. You can only extend other interfaces. Now what is happening is, so if I am writing now void m3, indirectly this I3 is containing void m1, void m2 and void m3, because interface I3 is extending I1 and I2. Interface I3 is extending I1 and I2. That means now interface I3 is containing all the methods of I1, I2. In addition to that, it is also having M3. This is the point you need to be understood. So extends keyword, if it is followed by a class name, then you can extend only another class, that too single. That too only single class can be extended. But if extends keyword is used along with interface name, then you can extend only interfaces, that too multiple. That too, multiple interfaces can be extended. Remember this point. Class name extends only class name, only one. Interface name extends any number of interfaces. So this is the point you need to remember with regard to extends keyword. Now, here in this public interface demo, if I write implements, because for inheriting interfaces, we will be using the keyword implements. For inheriting interfaces, we will use the keyword implements. Now I1 comma I2. So I am writing I1 comma I2. What does it mean? I am implementing, I am inheriting I1 and I2 interfaces. So just like for abstract classes, here also, since you are inheriting I1 and I2 interfaces, then it is your responsibility to provide implementation. I mean to provide body for the abstract methods of these interfaces. To provide body for the abstract methods of these interfaces, both I1 and I2. That means I need to provide body for void M1, which is of interface I1. I need to provide body for void M2, which is of interface I2. So I'll just provide body for that void M1. So again you can see an error. There is some error here. So the point to be noted here is, by default, if you don't specify any access specifier, that is public or private or protected, if you don't specify any access specifier, that is public or private or protected, then it will be considered as default. It will be considered as default. But I said you that whether you write it or not, inside an interface, for all the methods, there will be the keyword public abstract. There will be the keywords public abstract. And now the point to be noted here is, this method is a public method. This method is a public method. And when you are performing any overriding, the access specifier that you are going to use must be of the same level or the higher level. Must be of the same level or the higher level. Here default is the lowest level. Default is the lowest level. But here void m1, even though I don't see it here, but it is a public void m1 method. It is a public void m1 method. And here I cannot just write this as void m1, because if I just write like this, it is understood as the type default. It is understood as the type default. So I'll write it public void m1. Now you can see, when I haven't written public, you got some error there. When I have written public, you can see that error is gone. Understand the point? When you are overriding abstract class methods, it's not mandatory that you use the access specifier public for the overridden method. When you are overriding abstract class methods, it's not mandatory that you use the public access specifier for the overridden methods. But when you are overriding an interface method, it's mandatory to use the access specifier public. It's mandatory to use the access specifier public. The reason is because by default, all the methods in an interface are treated to be public abstract. So when you are overriding, you must use the access specifier of the same level or the higher level. Here public itself is the highest level. So when you are overriding a public method, you should use public. If you are overriding a default method, you can use protected or uh, public. But when you are overriding a the default method, again you can go for, yeah, public or protected. When you are overriding protected method, you can go for public. But when you are overriding public method, must and should use public only. I repeat, when you are overriding a default method, you should write the overridden method either as protected or public. When you are overriding a protected method, you should write it either protected or public. When you are overriding a public method, you must and should use public only. And obviously private methods cannot be overridden. Obviously private methods cannot be overridden, because they are hidden inside the class. Okay, anyway, let's resume. So here public void m1, there is still red cross mark because one more method need to be implemented, because you have inherited interface I1 and interface I2. Interface I1's abstract method is overridden by you, but interface I2's abstract method still need to be overridden. That's the error what you can see there. So if I add that method also, public void m2, now you can see all the errors are gone. All the errors are gone. So here you can see there's no red cross mark. If there is at least a single error, you can see even here a red cross mark. So now all the errors are gone. That's the reason you can see there may not be any statements. It's not for output purpose I am writing this code. It's only just to make you understand the importance of this interfaces. Suppose now here you can see, since I have written implements I1 comma I2, I have overridden both the I1 and I2 methods. Now suppose if I write I3 here, if I write I3, now you can see when I am writing I3, it is saying error, because I3 is having one of the method. For your understanding, let me just put this in comments for time being. I'll just put these two methods in comment for time being. And then I'll just override that method public void m3, because interface I3 is containing this m3 method. So I have written okay, spelling mistake. So public void m3. Now you can see whatever this interface I3 is containing m3 method, I have overridden that. I have overridden that, but still it is saying error. Why? The answer is simple. Earlier itself I said here I3 is extending I1 I2, indicating that both I1 I2 methods are also added to this I3. By default, you should understand the point that we go for inheritance for reusability of code, so that I need not rewrite the code. So we go for inheritance only for reusability of code. So here when I am extending I3 from I1 I2, I1 I2 methods are also added here. So that is the reason you should also override I1 I2 methods, since I3 is extending those. Now you can see the error is gone. So public class interface demo implements I3. You should override all I1, I2, I3 interface methods, because I3 is extending from I1, I2. Now when I have written body for all these three methods, you can see the error is gone. You can see the error is gone. And similarly, as I said here, if I try to say n equal to some 20, you can see error. If I am writing n equal to 20, you can see error. Why? When I move my mouse cursor, you can understand. Variable declare, oh sorry, if I write int, now it won't give any error, because it's treating this as its own variable. Okay, let me say n plus plus, and let me replace this a1. Okay, I can't write in outside the statement. Let me write it here. So here you can see final field cannot be assigned. Final field cannot be assigned. This is what I said. I haven't written here final, but still it is treated to be final. I said you public static final. So that's the reason when I am trying to modify the value, it is raising error. So these things need to be noted. Once again, I repeat all the statements what I mentioned with regard to these interfaces. So by default, all the variables declared inside an interface, whether we specify it or not, all the variables are treated to be public static final variables. And by default, whether you declare or not, all the methods that you define inside a interface are treated to be public abstract interfaces. So these are the points need to be understood with regard to interfaces. And one more point I will mention here, from Java 8 onwards, understand the statement, from Java 8 onwards, interfaces can contain default or static concrete methods. I repeat my statement, from Java 8 onwards, that is JDK 1.8 onwards, interfaces can also contain default or static concrete methods. The reason is because if I want to add any method, assume that if I want to add a new method to an interface, then what happens? Suppose there are four classes which have implemented or inherited this interface. If I am adding one new method, then what happens? All the four classes which inherited this interface must provide body for the newly added method into the interface. Understand the point? If I am adding a new method, let me do it. Suppose I am just writing void some m4. I'm just writing a small method. Now what happens if I just try to add a method void m4? What happens now? All the classes that have inherited this interface must and should add body. That means, being a programmer, I must go to all the classes which inherited this interface and I should add body for all the classes. Assume that there are thousands of classes in a huge project which have inherited this interface. Is it practically possible for you to go and add in all the classes? It might be a same statement or whatever it is. At least you should write body like this and just leave it with opening and closing brace. Is it possible in a huge project where if you are just adding one single method in an interface and going to all the classes and writing this method in those classes which inherited this interface? It's practically not possible. For that reason, what they have come up with, the Oracle Corporation, which is owning this Java, now what they have done is they have provided from JDK 1.8 onwards or Java 8 onwards, they have provided interfaces with a flexibility of having default or static methods. Now what I can do is I can just use a keyword. Generally we don't use this keyword default. By default, when we don't specify any word, we say that it is default. Now you can see there is no error. Now you can see there is no error. So default, a method. So default word we have to use only within the interfaces, because when you don't use any specifier, it is treated to be default. Other than that, we will not be using default word. But within interfaces, I can use this default word. So what does it mean? Means when I am saying something default, I am providing body for that method which can be used by all the classes that inherit this interface. That's what the point to be noted. By default, when I am writing a default method within an interface, it must be understood that there is a method which can be accessed by all the children without modifying, or if they want they can modify, without modifying, or if they want they can modify. I mean modify in the sense overriding, not in the original. Original will be hidden, so they can override this. This is the point to be noted. And one more thing, instead of default I can also go for static. I can also go for static. The only difference why these two are provided is, so default methods can be overridden by the children, but static methods cannot be overridden by the children. So static methods have to be used as it is. So static methods must be used as it is without being overridden. So this is the point to be noted. I repeat, this is only from JDK 8 onwards. This is only from Java 8 onwards, not prior to that. Not prior to that. So prior to that, we don't have the concept of defining body within an interface at all. Only prior to, only after 8 onwards, interfaces are being provided with the flexibility of defining methods with body, methods with body, and only two ways of providing. One is with default, like this. Sorry, spelling mistake. So default methods can be overridden. So this method can be overridden by the children. This method can be overridden by children. But if I use the keyword static instead of default, this method now cannot be overridden by the children. They have to use this method as it is. They have to use this method as it is. So understand this point. So this is with regard to interfaces. This is with regard to interfaces. I hope everyone understood this point. So this is how you will be using interfaces, uh, which you can declare only constants. That means only public static final variables can be declared inside interface, which cannot be altered by the children. And you can declare any number of methods by default, which are treated to be public abstract methods. And you can either go for static definitions, which cannot be overridden by the children, or default definitions, which can be overridden by the children. And another points which I made here is the extends keyword. When it is used with a class name, if it is used with a class name, then you can extend only class, that too only single. If the extends keyword is used along with interface, then you can extend any number of interfaces only, not class. And suppose if I am using class name followed by implements keyword, then I can use only interfaces, that to any number of interfaces. I can use interfaces, that to any number of interfaces. Remember all these points, because these might be looking simple, but in the assessments you get confused if you don't have this basic knowledge also. So just remember these points. And another thing is, you can also have class name followed by extends class name, something like that also you can have. Suppose if I am writing some sample, there is no sample here. Let me just write a class sample. Don't bother about the body anything, just for making you understand. Here you can see this is also possible. So a class can extend one class and implement any number of interfaces. This is all possible. This is all possible with Java. So these are the points I want you to remember with regard to. Okay, sample is already defined in this program. Here you can see sample.java is already there. So that's the only error. Other than that, nothing. So if I write sample2, now you can see the error is gone. That's the only error. Just ignore it. It's very silly thing. So these are the things that need to be understood with regard to interfaces. Now let us discuss about packages. Okay, I think it will take more time if I start discussing about packages, because I have to create uh, 2 to 3 packages now and add classes into that. I have to create new packages and then add classes into that, and then make you understand about this access specifiers, that is public, private, protected. All these access specifiers usage I have to demonstrate you along with the usage. I want to show all the demonstration along with the execution parts. So it will take more time. Let me not get into this packages explanation now. Before that, let me just at least show you this Eclipse overview, which I said yesterday's class. That Eclipse overview also I'll just give. So there in that PBL app, if you open that Eclipse overview, you can see all Java T points tutorial only. They haven't given any. I mean, Wipro team haven't made any PDF on this. So, but I'll just tell you the important things that are required for that. So basically, when you open Eclipse, in the very first introduction session also I have mentioned, so you will just create a workspace. and then once the window gets opened, you will see so many other windows, and you may not be seeing sometimes this package explorer or sometimes the outline, all that. So what you can do is you can just go to this window, and then you can go to this show view, and here you can see package explorer, outline, and sometimes when you open, you may not even being seeing this console also. Sometimes this console window also might be missing. You will not be able to see this console window, and when you try to just run the program also, you might be not seeing any output because of the console window being not shown there. So here like this, if I'm just clicking on run as Java application, right now it came, but sometimes the console window will not be coming here. At that time, what you can do is you can just go to this window and go to the show view, and then you can select this console. Here it is. Here it is. If the window is not being shown to you, even though you are right clicking, going to run as, and clicking on application, as I said, in some cases, in some of your machines, even though you are clicking on run as Java application, you will not be able to see any output. At that time, what you can do is you can just go to your window and go to show view and click this console. Automatically you can see that window there. So this is one thing. Similarly, this entire window might be vanished sometimes. I mean, this entire window might be vanished here. This is what, this entire window may not be shown to you in some cases. At that time also, what you can do is you can just go to this window and again go to show view and go here error log. Again that window gets open to you. Similarly, outline window, generally we will not be using this. That is the reason in my first class itself I said you can just keep closing all the windows that are not necessary for you. So if you want this outline window, you can just click that outline window. Here you can see the outline window will come. In general, what happens is this outline window will show you in image icons, the packages, the classes, the variables, the methods, all that. Here you can see and understand. You just require some basic knowledge. Here you can see this symbol represents it's a package. So talent is a package, and here you can see C, that means it's a class, and capital A here represents abstract. I'm just making you understand what this symbols are. So this symbol here, this square box, which is like packed, it's a package, and C, it's a class, and capital A, which is superscript to this C, represents that it is an abstract, and here N, it's a variable, and then here again C, so it's a test3, again it's a class. That's what you should understand. And here M1 method, which you can see here capital F, understand that it is a final method. I have declared it final now, that's what. And M2, again there you can see capital A, that indicates again it's a abstract method, and here for main you can see again there's capital S, indicating that it is a static method, so this is what the outline generally gives. But I think it's not required for us. That's the reason I said in the initial classes you can just close all the windows that are not required. So yeah, the point what I'm trying to make here is, if you don't see any of the windows expected directly on the screen, you can just go to this window, go to show view, and click on that particular window, you will get it. And similarly, the navigator, which will be showing you the deprecated methods, this window also I have closed initially when I just opened. So you can just yeah, here you can see. So it gives the information about all the deprecated methods. Let's not get into the details right now. So that's what the show view will give you. Show view gives the all the windows. And sometimes if you don't see this package explorer, if this package explorer is also not shown to you when you have opened your Eclipse window, so you can just go to the window, go to show view, and click on that package explorer. Again you get this package explorer, and there you can see all your projects, and you can expand whichever project and whichever package. Accordingly you can keep creating classes and experiment it. These are all the basic things which can be understood. So that's what with the show view. And yeah, in preferences also you can go and make necessary changes. Like here you can see all the preferences, but my advice is don't try to make any changes without having knowledge on this. So preferences will be useful for making certain changes for the entire applications that you are going to use with the IDE, complete Eclipse IDE. So without knowing all those changes, don't try to go and make changes. So that's what the preferences window is useful for. And perspective, uh, very rarely we will be using this customize perspective. And then yeah, here you can see the visibility is all that you can set this action set visibility shortcuts here you can find. So this is the perspective window. Let's not get into details, generally we will not be using. And what we'll be mostly using is this going for creating of a project. So new, and if you want to create a project, this is how you will be going. If you want to create a class, interface, enum or annotation, all these things. If you want to create a blank file, I mean you have in your mind what type of extension you want to create. Suppose you want to create a text file, you can just go for this text file like that, because by default if I choose class, a .java file will be created. So that's the reason we'll be doing that. And yeah, one more point, very important point I would like to mention here is, suppose if I want to perform some JDBC program, if I want to perform some JDBC programs, uh, right now you may not be understanding, but CSE people will be easily understanding what I am trying to say. EC people, I don't know whether they have studied in their syllabus or not. So JDBC means Java database connectivity. That means if I want to connect to my Oracle database or MySQL database, if I want to connect to my Oracle or MySQL database, then I require this JDBC driver. So in that case, what I have to do is I have to add my jar file, that is Java archive. JAR stands for Java archive. So if I want to add that jar file to my project, because you might be knowing the statements what need to be written for creating a connection and for creating a statement, all that, but still you will not be able to directly run that particular unless you add this jar file. What is that? JDBC jar file. So for that what you have to do is, observe carefully, you have to do right click on your project, not in the packages. Observe this, not somewhere here, not somewhere here. So that's the reason I have collapsed this expansion. I have collapsed this collapsion. So by default JRE will be added. Here you can see by default there are jar files being added. If you just expand this JRE, you can see so many jars there. So JAR stands for Java archive. So this Java archive is nothing but it's like a zip file. You all know what a zip contains. A zip contains several other files and folders. Na? Similarly, this jar Java archive contains other Java classes and interfaces. Java classes and interfaces will be there in this jar. Let's not get into that. Here, if you expand this jar, again you can see what are the other packages and classes. So you can just see all things what are there in that jar, but don't modify anything. Just for making you understand, I'm just showing. So yeah, the point what I'm trying to convey is, you have to right click on the project name, not anywhere else. Right click on the project, go to properties, go to properties, and then you get a window open like this. And then what you have to do is click on Java build path. Java build path, observe carefully, this I am showing you for JDBC applications purpose, because I'm discussing the Eclipse overview. For that I'm just saying all this. So I hope everyone understood so far. So I've just right clicked on my project and gone to the very last option, that is properties. And once the properties window got opened like this, properties for talent, observe this, properties for talent, I have chosen this Java build path. And here in this Java build path, you have to click on libraries. You have to click on libraries. There you can see, and suppose your computer machine is having many versions of Java. Some of the machines will be having, right now my system is having only one particular JDK version, that is 1.8. Some of them might be having JDK 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 like that. So in that case what you have to do is, suppose if you are writing these default methods in the interfaces, and if your JRE is being selected for 1.5 or 1.6, then when you try to do right click and run as Java application, you will be getting error. Why you will be getting error is because current selection of your JRE is made to 1.5 or 6, but as I said, this is only from 1.8, so you have to just navigate like this. Here I don't have here. If you have, you just need to make the selection. Yeah. Now if I want to add external jars, here you can see in this build path, Java build path. If you click on this libraries tab, here you can see an button add external jars. What you have to do is you have to click on this add external jars, and then you can see your folder gets opened, and then go to the drive where your Oracle is installed. I'm just going to the place where my Oracle is installed. So I have installed my Oracle database in my E drive. So I'm just showing you how to go. So E drive, app folder, user folder, and then in this I'm having product folder. Here I have installed Oracle 11 database. So Oracle 11.2.0 and DB home, and here you can see, yeah, JDBC. There is a folder JDBC. Click this JDBC, and there you can see LIB folder. Open this, and there you can see now OJDBC. OJDBC stands for Oracle Java Database Connectivity. OJDBC stands for Oracle Java Database Connectivity. So all these jar files were coming into my system with the installation of Oracle software itself. Now what I have to do is I have to select any of the OJDBC jar file. I am choosing OJDBC 6. If you want, you can choose OJDBC 14, and then what you do is click open. Click open. Now you can see, observe this. Now OJDBC 14 is added. OJDBC 14 is added here, and then click on apply and close. Click on apply and close. Now if I go to my project folder, can you see a new folder being created here? I hope all of you can see a new folder being created here, and if you just expand this, you can see OJDBC 14 is added. So this is how you will be adding new jar files to your project. This is how you will be adding new jar files to your project. So I hope everyone understood. So just do right click, go to properties, and then go to the Java build path, and go to libraries, and then click on add external jars, and you must be knowing where your jar file is located in your machine. Go to that particular location, and then as I said, you will be adding that jar, and then simply click on apply and close, and then whatever the external jars you are adding, they will be added under a new folder in your project, referenced libraries. So in your project, a new folder will be created with the name referenced libraries, and all the jars will be shown in this referenced libraries. Don't make any changes. And now after adding this jar file, now my project is ready for executing JDBC programs. Now my project is ready for executing JDBC programs. So don't worry. Once again, I'll just show all these things once I start discussing JDBC programs with you. So right now, just remember uh, the usage of adding external jars. Similarly, suppose if I want to uh, rename anything, if I want to rename a class, suppose here, yeah, in this program I'm having test 3 now. I want to just rename this test 3. So in that case, what I can do is just select it, right click, right click, and go to refactor. Under refactor, you can see a name rename. Just click that rename, and then here you can see options we got here. A drop down menu appeared here. This I am showing for renaming, because this particular test 3 might be reflecting in many places. Right now this might be a simple class which might be occurring in 3 to 4 places, but think of, you have a very huge project which contains hundreds of classes, and your manager asked you to modify this class name. What is this stupid class name? It's not at all meaningful. try to modify this class name. In that case, you can't keep searching all the classes where you have used this class name. So simply in one place, just right click, go to refactor. In that, click on rename. You will get a window like this, drop down menu. Go here and then open rename dialog, and then here I'm just making this 33. Just see, instead of test 3, I just made it 33 and clicking on finish. Now you can see here. Now you can see this is a small piece of code. You can see all the changes made in all places. And this is not the case if you have this project containing hundreds of classes, and there might be so many classes where this class name is used. But as I just shown you, this is the only place I'm going to perform rename. Automatically this name will be renamed in all the classes in the entire project. This renaming will be applied in all the places where this name is appeared in the entire project. This is how you will be performing. So once again, I'm just showing, select this particular name which you want to perform rename, and just go for right click, and then you can see option refactor. There you will go for rename, and then when you click it, you will get a option window like this. You can just go here, open rename dialog, and then you will just give the new name which you wanted to apply. And then when you click on finish, automatically your entire project which contains this particular class name will be renamed automatically. You don't need to do manually. That's the point I'm trying to say. So this is what the thing. And I hope other options which I have shown you, like when you want to add command line arguments, where you will be going, you will just go to run as or debug as, and then you will go to the configurations, and in the configurations you can see arguments tab. There you will be providing all the command line arguments which you wanted to provide, separated by space. So these are the basic things that are required for you to understand this Eclipse. These are the basic things which I want you to remember with regard to using Eclipse IDE. So this is about the Eclipse overview. I hope everyone understood whatever I have said you. So it's been more than 1 hour. Let's stop here. So today what I have covered is, I have covered this abstract classes, I have covered the interfaces, final keyword we have covered in the previous sessions itself. So, and this Eclipse overview also I have covered. This Eclipse overview also I have covered now. So only thing left out is packages and exception handling. Packages and exception handling. So in tomorrow's class, I'll cover this packages and exception handling very detailed, with showcasing the examples that makes you easily understand. So I'll stop here, and now I request you to provide your hall ticket numbers in the comment section. And if any queries with regard to today's class, please post those queries also in the comment section. I'll give 5 minutes time. I want all of you to post your hall ticket numbers in the comment section, or queries if any. Okay, students. I have received all your hall ticket numbers, and I don't see any queries being posted. I hope everyone understood today's concepts. Let's wind up for today, and let's meet tomorrow again at same time, 10:30 a.m. And as I said, tomorrow we will complete packages and exception handling. And one more advice before closing the session is, please keep practicing all the hands-on assignments and keep updating the completion status and keep practicing logic building problems. This is the last statement I would like to make with regard to today's session. So keep practicing all these hands-on assignments and select these checkboxes as you complete and update the completion status and keep practicing logic building problems. That's it for today. Let's meet tomorrow. Bye.